was Father's Day, but it's amazing. It's kind of a miracle that it worked out like it did, because this is on miracles. One night, a wife found her husband standing over the crib of their newborn. It's their first child. And she's watching him. He's looking down into the crib and his child, and his face has a mixture of emotions. There's disbelief, there's delight, amazement, some skepticism, and a lot of enchantment. Now, that's not the way he was. So she was touched by this, and she comes up behind him, and she puts her arm around him and just looks into his eyes. And she says, "Honey, a penny for your thoughts." "It's amazing," he said. "It's just a miracle. It's amazing." "Yes," she said, "honey, it is a miracle." He looked her in the eyes and said, "How can anybody make a crib like this for $66.35? That's the way it is, isn't it, ladies? Isn't it, ladies? So, to him it was a miracle. And obviously it has different meanings under different circumstances. Now, when I was about the age of those young ladies back there, I remember in Sunday school, our teachers telling us just wonderful stories from people from the Bible who performed miracles. And I just couldn't understand. I mean, if somebody did something amazing, how could you not believe? How could you ever lose your faith? And then I thought, hey, where are these guys today? You know, nobody's turning water into wine or stopping the sun in the sky or partying the Red Sea. I lived next to Rock Creek. It would have been neat if I could go down with the kids and said, hey, watch this. But that never happened. So, were these only Old and New Testament wonders of God? Why can't they happen today? What happened between then and now? Well, I've been reflecting on that for longer than I want to think. And, you know, miracles are happening every day. It just depends on the context. Merriam-Webster dictionary defines miracle as an unusual or a wonderful event that is believed to be caused by God. It's an extraordinary event of divine intervention in human affairs and a divinely caused natural phenomenon experienced humanly as the fulfillment of spiritual law. In other words, miracles aren't magic tricks. Miracles are something that happens that strengthens our faith in God and the promise that He'll always be there. So if we're not receptive, miracles just pass us by. If you don't have faith, you don't see. Faith and belief in God's ability to do strange and wonderful things are the necessary kernel for Christians to recognize miracles. Now, Moses led the Hebrews across the desert. He wasn't exactly sure where he was going, but God promised to lead him. And when the time was right, God parted the waters. When the time was right, there was water itself, and there was food, because Moses had faith. In the New Testament reading of today, we encounter people that had afflictions. Lepers, blind people, others affected with disease and possession approached Jesus and asked him to heal them. And he did it because they had faith. They knew he could do it. They just didn't think he could. They were absolutely 100% sure. The disciples in Jesus' name continued to do this throughout their teachings. Now, some people scoffed at these miracles. Like Lazarus, he really wasn't dead. Maybe he was just in a coma or really, really sick. Or a wind blew the Red Sea apart. I mean, who knows? It never has happened before or since, but why not? But these are people that are so bent on discrediting miracles, they try in vain to grasp for natural explanation. They don't want to see the big picture. They don't want to see that these are things beyond their physical reality, because then they would have to accept the fact that there's something much better than they are, much more powerful. Now, as Christians, we can't be bystanders. We are instrumental in this part of miracles. We have to witness them. It's the old, if a tree falls in the forest, if nobody's there, does it make a sound? I think it does, but that's just my faith. The Old Testament, this is a part I didn't recognize until I really got into this. The Old Testament reading reminds us that God gave humans dominion over the world. I never really caught on to that. He gave us the ability to see, touch, taste, smell, laugh, and love, so that we can be caretakers of his works. He's not doing this alone. These miracles are miracles in themselves, and he gave us these abilities. But we have to generate miracles from these abilities. Now, how can we perform miracles? Do I have enough faith to do this? Yeah, we all do. We have great faith. When you turn on the water or the faucet, we expect water, don't we? You flip on a light switch, you expect light. And if these don't happen, people come unglued. Now, I wasn't going to include this, but I remember in college we talked when Abe and Mary Lincoln were sitting in the White House. If their candle blew out, did they run out on the front lawn to see if everybody else's candle blew out? No, it just happens. But if we don't get the results we expect, it's not such a good day always. Well, some people say electric lights, they're not miracles, and running water is not a miracle. Why not? How weak are these? Where did the intellect in humankind come from to harness these things? Who defined the physical laws of nature and of the universe that gave us faith that allows us to create these things? Now, Albert Einstein never professed to have much religious belief, at least at the beginning of his career. But the more he developed his theories, the more he became convinced that there is divine guidance, and couldn't conceive of the precise universal relationship that exists in the cosmos without being guided by the hand of God. As we heard from the first chapter of Genesis, God made the universe out of chaos. He put order into our world. So advances in medicine, technology, the arts, culture, languages, music, on and on and on, they're creations of man as a conduit from God. He gave us these talents. He gave us these abilities, and he promised us a universe that makes sense. In the movie Bruce Almighty, the main character, Bruce, he's very unhappy with his life. And he's just not having things go his way. And so who does he blame? He blames God. God just isn't running the world the way it needs to be run. And I don't know if you've seen the movie or not, but Morgan Freeman plays a part of God, and it's really pretty good. He visits Bruce. He says, "Okay, Bruce, just what's going on here?" Bruce says, "You're doing a terrible job." And God says, "Tell you what, I'll give you a small corner of the world, and you can just manage it all you want. Just don't use it to your own benefit." So Bruce starts out, and he really doesn't take it very seriously, but the more he gets involved, the deeper the mud gets. He gets to the point where he desperately wants God to take back that responsibility. So God appears and says, "Okay, Bruce, I think you'll learn something." He says, "Take this with you. If you want to see a miracle, you've got to be that miracle." He wasn't talking about turning water into wine. He was talking about greater efforts. How about the single mother who's holding down 2 jobs? She has 2 or 3 children. She fixes them breakfast every morning. She gets them to school. She does their homework with them at night. Isn't that a miracle? Think about it. Every day. How about the young man who escapes a terrible home life and decides he's not going to be like where he came from? He holds down a job or 2 and he attends night classes so he can get a college degree. Sometimes we see miracles and we don't even know it. Last fall, my wife attended a county park district workshop, and they talked bluebirds, and all she could talk was bluebirds because they had them on her farm when she was a kid. And we live in town. There hasn't been a bluebird within 3 miles of our house ever since I've been there, and that's 20 years. But sometimes you do random acts of survival, And so I purchased a bluebird house, and we just put it up for ornament, up on a pole. Guess what? This spring, Mom and Dad bluebird showed up. Couldn't believe it. Now that's a miracle. Where'd they come from? Then they had pups, birds. They had babies. We could hear them in there. That's a miracle right there. And one of the biggest miracles are we have 3 cats that leave no leaf untouched, anything that moves. They went out of their way to give this bluebird family space. So things like that can be miracles. Biggest miracle of all, you and you and you and you, and we're all here. How did we get here? Think of all the things that could have happened to prevent that. But we're here today. We're living. We're breathing. We're miracles of God. Things could have gotten in the way. On a personal note, my father spent almost 5 years in the Army Air Corps. He was one of the first people drafted. Not a happy man, but he was in for almost 5 years. But he became greatly attached to the company chaplain. And he played the piano and the field organ at all the church services as they moved across North Africa, through Sicily, and into Italy. And he was in Pisa when the victory was declared in Europe, and he had an opportunity to take a sightseeing excursion into the Italian Alps. This is something he really wanted to do. He and his buddies were ready to take off when the chaplain came over to the plane and asked him to stay and play his piano for a special Thanksgiving service for the war's end. And with some reluctance, he agreed. And you can guess what happened. A few hours later, they received word that the plane had crashed. No one survived. But he always believed there was a reason. Now, the story doesn't end there. About 10 years ago, I have a retired minister friend who went into the used book business. I guess when you're done with the ministry, you get into books. You just kind of speak that way. And he would go to auctions. And he went to an auction about 30 miles away from our town. And he came back, and a few days later he called me and he said, "Jim, come on over. I got something for you. You're not going to believe this." There was a thank you card that had been tucked in one of the books. Thank you card is from the chaplain, thanking my dad for his work. Now, miracles. How did that card get in that book? My dad was an avid reader. How did that book get 30 miles away from where my dad lived? How did it get back to Tiffin, into the hands of a friend of mine who just decided to go into the used book selling business, who only knew me about 5 years? I mean, God might as well just slap me on the back of the head. Because I knew nothing about this card. I knew about my dad's experience, but I'm standing here today because of what happened to my father, and I was reminded about it 60 years later based on a miracle. We all have reassurances like that. If we let God watch these over us, He reminds us in so many subtle and not so subtle ways who's in charge of the universe and who's directing and guiding our lives in order that we can perform His miracles. And so, my friends, we must, through God's grace and power of demonstrating His love to us, and that we are His greatest miracles, that we have to perform in concert with Him. He's not going to do it all because He knows that we can help. So as the first chapter of Genesis proclaims, we are here to do miracles. We are here to help Him manage His universe. He put us in dominion over everything on earth. And we can continue to do wonderful things if we have faith in Him and know that He promises to be with us every second of every minute, of every hour, of every day that we walk this earth. By the grace of God our Father and our redemption by His Son, each and every one of us are His living miracles. Let's never lose sight of that. Please pray with me. Lord, we are willing to receive what You give,